Good evening. Let me get my chat open here. Why don't you type in that chat box and say howdy to me now? Amen. There we go. Amy, you're number one. Hello, Diana. How are you? Anthony, God bless you. Glad you guys are with us. Bev and John. Sadie's probably sacked out in her bed. She likes the early morning broadcast. Richard, how are you? Brad, happy birthday. Everybody wish Brad happy birthday. Are you 40 today? Man, that's a threshold birthday. Am I right? Hello, Miguel, Rose, Julie, Amanda. Hello, Amanda. Carol. Wow. Thanks for jumping in here. I want to get jumping in here and go try to get through this in under an hour. I was going to say a half hour, but you know better. I would like to. Who knows? Hello, Donna. Good to see you tonight. Some of y'all are with me at 6 o'clock. That was 15 hours ago. Yeah, that's why I need to get this done so I'm an early riser. I've been rising up early, seeking the Lord early. Early will I seek him. That became a conviction of mine because I was hit or miss. And so I've decided I'm not going to miss. Good morning, Jason. Good morning. Good evening, Jason. Sorry. Hallelujah. See, it's morning. When you're going on 5 hours of sleep and you get your mornings and nights mixed up. Hello, Sarah. How are you? Preacher. Yeah, okay. Right back at you. I love you. Love you, Pastor Jason. Love pastors. All right. Well, so I'm doing this over several nights on Thursday nights at 9 o'clock. And it's not about drawing a big crowd or whatever, but it's to get it into the archives, so to speak. I do love and want to share my heart. I want to put things in a prophetic history timeline, especially as it pertains to City Point, not just about me, but because I have walked with this now for quite a while. And, some have asked me, because they ask how long have I been at City Point? Well, I'm going to kind of make that clear tonight because it's a part of City Point's history, but it also mine that was intertwined with it. As you know, most of you know that the church operated originally under the name of Victory Christian Center. It was launched in 1999, was the official launch, about July, I think, of 1999. And Kerry Wilson, who had been the pastor at the Portage Church of God of Prophecy on Central Avenue, stepped out of that and rented a room at the park department and launched Victory Christian Center. I was transitioning out of another ministry around that time. I was also a business partner with Kerry Wilson. I have known Kerry Wilson from back in the 1980 or so. I met Kerry Wilson when him and Pam lived in New Salisbury, Indiana. and I was traveling Indiana as a state youth director and a state evangelist, and I was doing a lot of traveling across the state. The first time I met Kerry was right after his and Pam's daughter had died suddenly of spinal meningitis, and it was it was a very uh, was very sad. I had happened to be traveling in the area. I actually spent an evening with them because my wife and I, we had lost a son, and we had the opportunity to meet them, pray with them, encourage them. Carrie was in all of that, had been backslidden, and then came back to the Lord as a result of all of that he had been through. And within a matter, I don't know, I think it was less than a year from then that he ended up coming up to Portage to pastor that Church of God of Prophecy. And I was, by then I was traveling the state and traveled for a while, then pastored I pastored a stint of a little over 3 years in Indianapolis. And then I came up to South Hammond, where I got to know Kerry a little better. Long story short, in order to help him get out of trouble with the IRS, I took my carpenter skills and his skills to sell people some things, and we did a few decks and a few remodeled projects and raised the cash that he needed to get himself out of trouble with the IRS. But what happened as a result of that is that little project to raise some money turned into a full-blown business within a short amount of time. And we were doing a lot of business, a lot of work. It exploded. We did some development, bought some land, started building new houses. And, and we did that together in a partnership. I was a carpenter by trade. And so, that was our relationship. And about the time we were well into it, probably, 6-7 years, but I had been a part of another ministry in Maryville, and I was transitioning out of that, and made a couple of stop-offs on the way to help a couple of pastors and try to find my way. And I Kerry launched this thing, and he said, "Why don't you come and co-pastor this church with me?" And it was about the year 2000, a few months into the launch of that I joined with him and to co-pastor. Now, in that, we shared preaching. I did most of the Wednesday night Bible studies. I taught a class there for years that I thoroughly enjoyed. I love to teach, and it gave me an opportunity to teach in depth. And I taught a 3-year series called The Spiritual Man. And but the thing, by the time I got there, and I really prayed, and I want to say the right things here, but give you the honest picture. Hello, Tracy, Ruth. By the time I got to Victory Christian Center, I'd come through like a lot of turmoil and just fighting my way out of some things, and some things let me just say it straight up. I was hurt. I was wounded. Um, I was I was I was a mess. And but I was a good Christian, so I would put my smile on my face. And because I've always been a leader, I've know how to cope and go to church and put my suit on. And back in those early days, we wore suits and ties, and we dressed it, and we looked it, and we talked it. And but much of the time for me in that particular era, I wasn't healthy. I just don't know how to. So I'm not here to cast. I'm not going to cast aspersions on other people, because if you were a part of this, and there are a few of you that were, and there was not an overall healthy. Uh, there was not a healthy state of much of the leadership at the time. And you know that, and I've been on this, and one of the things God's taught me over the last number of years, and I'm sorry to say it took me a long time to get to it, but the importance for hothouse Christianity, or what we call a greenhouse, where the environment is conducive to growth. And many churches have environments that are conducive to performance, but they're not conducive to spiritual growth. Are y'all with me tonight? Hello, Adele. Hello, Josie. So I'm just going to get a little real and raw, but I'm going to tell it from my experience, not casting aspersions on anyone else. But I'm just telling you that I was not in a healthy place. I was hiding my hurts. I was protecting and shielding my my defenses. I had these walls up, and I know none of y'all have ever done this. And but because of my wounds and the way that I was wounded, I didn't trust people. I wasn't going to be honest. And so let me go back to the hothouse Christianity. See, I believe Christians should be brought up in a hot environment, with the fire of God. And most of our churches are not on fire. And I'm not talking about emotional or emotionalism. I'm talking about the kind of fire that burns in a person's heart, that creates a passion in them for God, and a passion for unity. A passion for God and his people. Many of us, we claim to love God, but we don't like people. And that's a problem, because your relationships with people directly reflect your relationship with God. So if you don't like people, that says a lot about you, not about people. And that was saying a lot about me. So I was very guarded. I did my stuff. People who were there then know I preached my heart out. I always preach my heart out. I'm a preacher. I am a preacher. I'm not being arrogant or proud, but I've always been a preacher. I can preach. And there was a time where I feel like I was much better at preaching than I am now. Because I really stopped trying to be a preacher a few years ago, and I just tried now. I try now just to share what is really out of my heart, and not out of just trying to deliver a message. What I realize is that I am the message, and that I need my life and my message need to be one, because I was preaching a lot of things back then that I wasn't walking in. I was preaching a 10-story salvation and living in the basement. I was preaching freedom, and I was bound to my own hurt. I was preaching, that you could go free, and yet I was in bondage to my own self and my own blindness. And I've given again. I'm not trying to. I'm just saying that because this is important to what led up to some things that. So I did this for about 3 or 4 years. I think it was about 3 years. And again, I don't have a really strong timeline on it because I tried for a while to block this all out of my mind. Because after about 2003 into 2004, things really started coming apart in my life. And so my life was about to go through some really, some really dark places. But interestingly enough, so would Victory Christian Center. Only I actually resigned in around 2000, or early 2004. My son had gotten arrested. His picture was on like the second page of the newspaper. My wife and I were having extreme marital problems, and it looked like a divorce was imminent. I was busy, I'd been so busy with this business thing, and I got so deceived by the money that I was making. Many of you know, I had an airplane, I had a boat, I had the house, I had the cars, I had money in the bank, I had all of these things, and my heart got taken in. And really, what would happen is I would go through a Luke 22 moment. In fact, someone, this was an interesting time, because as I look back, I call these the silent years, because it was almost like God went silent in my world. It was like no one. I was not hearing from God, and no one was bringing me like a word from God either, which is unusual, because being the person that I am, I attract prophetic people, and I've always had a history of walking in the prophetic and being a recipient of the prophetic. I believe in the prophetic. But in this period from like 2001 to 2004, it was like the voice of the Lord went silent. But as I look back, and I realized that, well, when God goes silent, there's a reason. That speaks louder than any word that he could possibly give you. Think about it from a scriptural standpoint. God spoke to Israel, sent them prophet after prophet. He gave them warning after warning. And then from the Malachi, who was the last Old Testament prophet, there's 400 years of silence. That 400 years speaks volumes, where it says essentially that I've sent you prophet after prophet. You've killed them. You've rejected them. God sent me warnings, and God sent me little promptings, and God sent me course corrections. But my pride, my stubbornness, my arrogance, I rejected it. I pushed it off. My son goes off on a binge and was gone deep over the edge. My wife and I were not getting along. My marriage, the business that we had made much money with was worth a lot of money, doing millions of dollars of work, was shaking, because we would go into a time where I just I just had my I was in a place of complete burnout, and I was slowly, actually, can I just tell you, I was backsliding. I was slowly backsliding in my heart. And when I resigned from the church, that was kind of the last straw, because I even, people thought, well, he's just stepping back, I just stepped back because I didn't want to drag the church through any of the shame and the guilt and and all that I was feeling. And I went into this almost 3 years. It was 2.5 years of a prodigal journey. And 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 so um, and so what happens with my life then is that is that that um, in this journey, it was really a dark period of my life, and and many of you have heard me share this in messages, different parts of it, about the prodigal. I took a prodigal journey. Here I had been a pastor for years. I'd been a leader, a spiritual leader, and stood in many positions, well respected by people, because when I was in, but now I realized my life was coming apart. I didn't want to drag God through any of it. And so I went out, and when I went out, I went out. That's just kind of the way I operate. I'm in, I'm out, I'm out. And then I decided I needed to get out. I didn't plan to backslide. I planned to try to get my act together. But you see, all of the hurts, all the disappointments, all the opposition, all the bitterness, and all the anger. I mean, I was an angry person. I was angry. I was frustrated. Church had frustrated me, because all I ever wanted was a church to love God and go after him. And all I ever pastored, it seemed like, was people who wanted to play church, and they wanted to relish in the pomp and the circumstance. And I wanted God. And as a young man, I mean, I'm the guy who tore the Sunday school board off the wall, and like Moses, crashed it on the rocks. I'm the guy that took the songbooks and hid them so people would get a wake-up call and realize we're here to worship God. And that passion for God, all it ever did was get me in a lot of hot water and a lot of opposition, and a lot of people calling on me and reporting me and fighting me and resisting me. And I got to be honest with you, it got to where I could only take it so much. And in my heart, I took this opportunity when I resigned from Victory in 2004, and then I went off into the prodigal journey, and I found myself back in a bottle. I found myself doing things I never thought I would be doing. I gambled money that I should have never gambled. I just gambled my life away. And because I was so empty, and I don't even go into details. I don't want to glorify that or the life that I was living. I'm just telling you, I was a mess. And I stayed in that mess. My wife and I did split up for a while. My son and I were estranged for a long while. My life was a mess. I walked away from the construction business, and then eventually I would lose the other business that I had opened up after that was a kitchen and bath store. And I lost that, and I ended up filing bankruptcy, and I lost everything I had. I lost the house, I lost my cars, I lost everything. I had all of my business signed by my personal stuff, and the bank took it all. They took everything I had to stand good for the debts I had incurred. And I ended up filing bankruptcy, and essentially I was in a mess. But in 2007, the Lord really got a hold of me. I mean, I could look back, and I could tell you that I was going through a Luke 22 moment. I knew I needed to be sifted. I knew I needed to have some things dealt with in my life. Just like Jesus told Peter, he said, Peter, Satan hath desired to sift you, and he has asked for you by name. And I knew the enemy was coming after me. I knew it was a plot and a plan to destroy me, to take my dream, to destroy my heart, to destroy my ministry, to destroy my marriage, to destroy my family, to destroy everything. He robs, kills, and destroys. And there I was, and I was come to the end, and I was broke, and I was facing homelessness essentially, and didn't know what to do. And to make a long story short, I ended up going down to Florida with my daughter where, I mean, I was at my wit's end, and her pastor flew me down there. And the whole thing was a setup. The whole thing was God going to just ambush me. And I wound up in a meeting in the weekend on a Friday night while Gary Smith, Dr. Gary Smith, preached a message called The Prodigal Son. And he preached out of Luke 15, a chapter I had preached myself several times in my ministry. But I saw things in that story I'd never seen before. Most of all, I saw myself. I saw myself on a prodigal journey, that I had left the farm, that I had left the father's house, and I had ran, and I'd spent everything I had and wasted it and lost it and gambled it away and drank it away. And there I was, broken and completely undone, and looked like everything was over and my whole life was coming to an end. And Dr. Smith spoke into my life. God spoke in through Dr. Smith how that he was running after me. He was running after, the Father was running after me. And all he was waiting was for me to turn. And I turned in 2007. And I turned back. I came and I told the Lord, I don't ever care to pastor. I don't ever want to do any of that again. It hurts. There's so much pain. There's so much scar. But Lord, if you'll just let me serve you, I'll go get in a church somewhere and I'll be the best member I can be. And I'll help a pastor. I'll come alongside and I'll clean the church. I'll help wash his car for him. I'll do anything I have to do. Lord, I just need to come home. And just like he did, the prodigal son, he said, nonsense. Put a robe on him, put a ring, and put shoes on his feet. It's time for him to get back walking again. Kill the fatted calf. And their heaven celebrated, and my heart was completely changed. And I had to make a decision. And God, what do I do? Where do I go from here? And I said, God, help me make a fresh start. Let me go find a church somewhere where nobody knows me and I can just start over. And God said, no, I want you to go back to where you left. I didn't understand it then. I didn't know what God was up to. I knew it was going to be humiliating in a certain degree to go back, but I did. My first Sunday back from Florida, I went and sat in the back at Victory Christian Center. I went a little late, so I didn't have to talk to anybody. And my plan was to leave a little early, so I didn't have to talk to anybody. And I got in, and I sat on the back, and God just broke down my heart. I began to weep. I began to cry. God began to tenderize my heart. Tears are a language. All the witchcraft that had been in my eyes, the tears began to clean out the witchcraft. Come on. You know what witchcraft is? Witchcraft, when the spirit of witchcraft comes, it causes you to look at the past and tells you never did anything. And then it makes you look in the future and says you'll never do anything. That's the real power of witchcraft. When the witchcraft is work, it brings a spirit of hopelessness. And what it tells you is you never did anything, and you were never all that good. You were never any good anyway. And then it tells you as it comes to your future, you're never going to get there, never going to get there. But those tears came, and the tears began to walk. I cried for months. I cried for months as God began to restore me. And the church opened their arms and didn't judge me. There was a lot of stuff going on there. And if you were there, and those of you who know, I'm not here to uncover any of that. That's all. Love covers sin. But I'm telling you that God was doing a work in me. And I was broken, but I was in a healing process. And by the graces of God, I didn't ask for it. I didn't want it. I didn't invite it. I fought it. I resisted it. tried to refuse it, but I ended up back teaching and back in a limited way doing the work of a pastor. Even then, God began the prophetic opened up again. I hadn't heard a direct word from God in many, many, many years. And all of a sudden, God's prophetic word starts coming alive to me. I wanted to read to you one of the words that when I went to California, I made a visit out to Bethel. And I went to, and I'm in this broken phase of my life. I tell you, I just would spend time because can I just tell you, like before all this, before I took my prodigal journey, I had broken fellowship with the Lord. I had no prayer life. I was preaching and I had no prayer life. I had no life in the closet. I was not abiding in the vine, which was part of what was setting me up for the downfall. And the only thing that sustained me was that Jesus was praying for me, like he told Peter, Satan had desired, he's sifting you, but I have prayed for you. The only thing that kept me at all was Jesus. But now I've come back and all this, and I'm broken, I'm weeping, I'm just like crying to God, I'm crying out for God. I'm trying to now find out, God, what is it now? What do I do? What do I do with all this? And how do I deal with all this hurt and this disappointment and all the mess and all this stuff? And I just was in this brokenness and contriteness. I was in a constant state of repentance for months and months. I decided it was time. I had to go after God. I could not play anymore. It wasn't about making money anymore. It wasn't about a business. It wasn't, and the opportunities were coming and I could go back into business. I could go back and make money and I could go back and do a lot of things. And trust me, the thought crossed my mind because you know what I found out is I like money. Yeah, I found out I had grown accustomed to living in that kind of a lifestyle, and now when that's gone, but I think that being going through that brought me a whole new appreciation for blessings and how I had taken for granted so many things. And so and again, I'll get back to trust me, I'm not trying to get this about me, but this is how it gets back to Victory Christian Center. So I'm coming back and now, I'm struggling about what do I do? What am I going to do now? And the process is 6 months turned into a year and there's something in me that's burning in me and I'm talking to Carrie at the time and I'm like, Carrie, I feel like we need to like quit everything and let's just go for God and let's go for the build this church and let's do everything. And that wasn't in his plans and that he didn't want to quit and stop doing his outside stuff. And I said, well, then I'm going to start looking for a position because I feel like for me, my nature is it's all or nothing. And God's calling me to go all in. And I told God when I came back, I only have a few more years at best. And whatever I do, I'm going to finish strong. That became my swan song. I even did a podcast for a while and it's still on iTunes. I haven't done a broadcast in years, but it was called Finishing Strong. And that all I talked about was how the need to finish whatever you started, finish it and finish strong. And that became the cry of my heart. God, whatever it is, whatever you have for me, I want to finish strong. And I went up to California and I'm in Bethel at California, which is a highly prophetic community and known for its spiritual hunger and yes, they've been accused of a lot of things, but knowing the leaders that like I do, Bill Johnson and Chris Valentin, these men were speaking into my life and in my time of restoration. And I found myself in one of the prophetic rooms, and this 12-year-old boy that I was sitting with and with three other people. as we sat down and I didn't tell him anything. I didn't introduce myself even. I mean, they had my name on a card and that was it. And here's what he said. He said, "You carry such a presence of the Father. People feel safe and protected around you." See, I didn't feel that way. I was pretty beat down. See, I'm climbing out. You understand? I'm still fighting the negativity. I'm still fighting the feelings of failure. I'm still fighting, like I went too far and there's no way back. I've told that story. Those were the two lies the devil told me for years. You went too far and there's no way back. I sit here and this 12-year-old boy, he says, people feel safe and protected around you. I see you as a house. And God is doing a makeover. He's upgrading everything. The old is giving way to the new. New tile, new granite, new appliances. You've been on a journey, and he's going to reward you for your faithfulness. And I'm thinking, faithfulness? You are a giver, and you pour yourself out to people. And now it's time for you to receive. You are a well-loved son. And God is looking from heaven, and he's looking at a blueprint. Jesus and the Father are looking and talking it over, glancing in your direction. Jesus said there's something missing as he looked at the blueprint. So they go out to a mine and they're digging and they find a diamond covered in it, covered in mud. And they wash it and polish it, and they take it back to the blueprint and put it into the blueprint. And the Father says, it's perfect. So you see, that was at a time when I was in probably going into what I know now to be the greatest storm of my life. I thought I'd been through some storms. I thought I'd been through some storms. Terry, shut the door, please. I thought I had been through some storms. And I would walk in on a Sunday morning in August of 2011. And there Carrie, this was Monday after a weekend service. And Carrie announced to me in the office as I walked up, he said, I'm resigning, I'm stepping out, and I'm asking you to take this church. And I'm like, what? I mean, it's just like totally, and I was confused. I was shocked. And he said, some things transpired over the weekend. My wife found out that I've been having an affair, and it said I'm resigning. and effective immediately. And he put some things together, and at that time, him, his wife, his son, his daughter, his son-in-law, that was it. That was their last Sunday, that previous Sunday at the church. And I was thrust into it. Of course, I had a decision. I mean, it wasn't like I had to do anything. And I would be faced with that decision, because now what happens to this church? I didn't know all the details. I didn't know all that had transpired. To this day, I still don't know all the details. This is why at church we need a hot environment, a hot house, a greenhouse in our churches. HOT, it's an acronym for honesty, openness, and transparency. And if your church is not hot, if there's not honesty and openness and transparency, then your church is not well. Your church is sick. Your church has deep issues. Because where there's no honesty, there's no real relationships. Honesty, relationships are built on trust, and trust is built on honesty. Let me just tell you this. If you have secrets you're keeping from your spouse, you do not have a good marriage. If you as a leader have secrets you're keeping from your people, you are not a good leader. If as a man you have secrets you're keeping from your wife, you are not a good husband. To your friends, if you got secrets you're keeping from your friends, then you really don't have any friends at all. Because it's very easy to operate in a church setting and yet not be honest. Listen, you ever heard the saying, that you go to the factory to see how the sausage is made? You ever heard that saying? Because if you and I knew what they put in the sausage, we'd probably never. I love sausage, but if I don't want to go in the factory and see all they throw in that sausage, because if you see how the sausage is made, I would never eat it again, right? I've been on the inside of church for 40 years. I've been inside with leaders. I've been inside of different structures, organizations. I'm telling you, I've seen how the sausage is made, and there's a lot of dishonesty. I've carried dishonesty where I just wasn't being honest with people or honest with my fellow leaders. There's a problem with that. Jesus was always honest. And let me just go on while I'm making people mad here about openness. So in a hot environment, there has to be openness. You have to be willing to share your struggles. You know how many people are struggling and you don't even know it, and they're sitting right next to you every Sunday. Some of them, and then one day, I remember when I'm not going to call out names. I remember when something happened and this person was well known and well liked, and everybody was shocked by what transpired. But really the truth is, the reason we were shocked is because this person had been hiding and had not been open and not been honest and not shared their struggles. And then eventually the struggle consumed them. How is it we're shocked when we live in an environment where there's no honesty, where if you're not being honest, you expect anyone around you to be honest? If you're not being open, if you're not willing to discuss your struggles, which most of us aren't, Most of us aren't willing to talk about our struggles. Most of us are, we think we're, we think we're smarter than God, like we're actually pulling the wool over his eyes too. But the Bible says, listen, everything that's done in secret is going to be revealed. And what you say in the dark is going to be seen in the light. And what you whisper in the closet is going to be shouted from the rooftops. Yeah, I've been through some things. I've learned some things. I'm sorry it took so long. I'm sorry it took me so many times around the mountain to get it sometimes. But then there's this whole thing about transparency. I've seen so much fraud and fake in the church in my days. I've seen leaders stand in the pulpit and lie about why someone left and how they left, and try to paint and lipstick on a pig. And then we wonder, where's God in all this? But you see, I was talking with someone today, a young person who has a real heart for the Gen Z. Do you know Gen Zers are they don't really want much to do with the church. They're checking out of the church in droves. I'm 66. I can't say I don't know everything or relate to everything that Gen Zers are, but one thing I can say is I understand. I understand why they're leaving the church, because there's so much of the church that is so fake and so fraudulent. They don't want to be a part of something that's not real, not honest, not genuine. Yeah, I know this is rough, and I'm gonna wrap this up. But I have to go here because you see, I got to this place, and even then I'm struggling. So in 2011, which was 11 going on 12 years ago, I was struggling. I'm just being honest with you. I'm not saying I handled a lot of my beginnings there. Probably I would handle it a lot different today if I knew what I knew today as what I did then. But I was struggling. I was struggling to find my own way. I was still struggling to get my way back and get healthy again, because I was not healthy. I was not a healthy person. I'm not talking about physically. I'm talking about emotionally. I was not healthy. Spiritually, I was just fighting my way back. And now this thing is put on me, and I'm trying to figure out, God, is this you? And then people are walking up to me and they're giving me words like this. But it's the first time because in my heart, there was a lot of in my head going, no, run for this. You do not want this. Look at what this has been, and the source of the hurt and pain of your life has been all around pastoring. This would be a good time to run. But in my heart, I thought, could this be it? Could this be my opportunity for this makeover, and to help try to form and lead a church that would come out of the fake and the fraud and the shallowness and the superficiality, and really try to build a church that actually goes after the presence of God. A church that's not going to try to build platforms and performance, and not build it on just that we pulled off a good service, but that we really are going after God, that this heart for God takes over, and that if nothing else, God's presence was with us today, because that's been my heartbeat. I haven't all done it well. I haven't all done it, but that's where I started from 40 years ago. And my journey in the church helped put that fire out. I'm not making an excuse. I'm just saying that, sometimes going to church is not the best thing for somebody who loves Jesus. Because I remember one of my first times at church, some brother came up to me and he rebuked me for the dress my wife was wearing. I was a new Christian, and he rebuked me because my wife was wearing a sleeveless dress. And I'm like, I didn't understand. And I'm like, I didn't, and and here, instead of loving acceptance, instead of walking with someone, I mean, the dress wasn't ungodly. It was this person, it turned out this person was a wife abuser and beating his, but he was a leader in the church, but all the while he was beating his wife and ends up in a big divorce and everything, but he was rebuking me because my wife wore a sleeveless dress. That's the kind of things I faced in my church experience. I don't even know how I survived getting to the ministry with some of the stuff I saw, some of the stuff I was on the receiving end of. You understand what I'm saying? I'm just being honest with you. I'm telling you, my goal has been I've been trying to be a reformer ever since I've been around. And I've been resisted, I've been talked about, I've been lied against, I've been rebuked, I've been scorned, I've been publicly ripped on, and all of that. But you know what? My heart is hot after God. I really don't care what people think. I don't really care what people think they know, because you have not walked in my shoes. You have not walked where I have walked. You can stand back and go, yeah, our church was a bunch of hypocrites. No, that church was people who were loving God, people who were wanting to be led by men of God, but the men of God around them weren't very healthy, and I was one of them. And so now I'm in this dilemma, like, what do I do? And I have days to make this decision, so to speak. And God, I mean, I can just tell you there was a whirlwind of things going on in me and around me. It was like a hurricane. You talk about transitions. I like to think of transitions as a Caribbean day on the beach, white sand and flat water. I came into a transition that was like a hurricane. Things were flying, words were flying, accusations were flying, rumors were flying. I got accused of being on the inside of things, that you knew all about this and we're covering. And I'm like, if I knew all about it, I would have left too. I mean, but that's how it went. And then I got to decide, well, am I going to do this? And I'm trying to hear the voice of God. And then things like that are coming to me. Here was one about a year later. This was after I took this, but I was still in my mind wondering, have I done the right thing? Have I done the right thing? And I'm into this, and it's about a year, 2012. I mean, it's like it's still a storm. I can only tell you it was like a storm. There was a storm inside me. There was a storm all around me. And I go to IHOP in Kansas City just to get away for a few days. And here I go to the prophetic room there, and there's two young ladies, probably in their 20s. And the girl looks at me. Again, she doesn't know me. I'm not talked about anything. I didn't disclose anything. And she said, "You're a protector." She said, Joel 3:17 says, "Then you will know and understand fully that I am the Lord your God, dwelling in Zion, my holy mountain. Then Jerusalem will be holy, and strangers who do not belong will no longer pass through it." She goes on, she says, "You are on a pilgrimage going up a holy hill. You have an army following, and you are taking and protecting the hill the Lord has given you. You are defeating the enemy by the arrow. You protect and guard what has been given to you. The arrow is the spoken word. You are always looking around to see that you're in a safe place. You're alert, aware, and you pay attention to detail. And as you stand, strength is coming to you. His presence is over you. And while you are guarding your people, he is guarding you." Yeah, I was in the middle of a storm. Internally, externally, I didn't all handle it well. I was still finding my feet, trying to find my legs under me. But this is where the story gets really interesting. Because as we went into 2014, this is when the prophetic swirl becomes so intense, and God begins to do some things that are so outside my mind. And I'm going to share those years 2014 to 2016 in part 3 of this. I wanted to share this part. This is not to uncover anyone. I hope you hear my heart, and I was very careful, because I'm not here to talk about someone else's problems. I'm being very honest about mine, about my failures, about my struggles, about where I missed it and where God picked me up again, brushed me off, and put me back in his plan. I hope it's a message of hope for some of you. I hope it's a message that you can grab a hold of, that no matter what you've been through in your life, that it's not over until it's over. I have had people speak death over me. They've spoken, this is never going to work. They've spoken that you're not a good leader. You're never going to bring this church through this. They've spoken all kinds of negative, toxic things right to me. All I can tell you is he is faithful, and he watches over his word to perform it. I shared with you all Sunday morning. If you didn't hear it, you should go on Facebook or YouTube and watch Sunday morning when Vince turned it back over to me. And I read Jeremiah out of Jeremiah chapter 1, and about this prophetic word that God had given Jeremiah. And I think it's so appropriate for the City Point Church. I want to tell you, I feel like in my heart of hearts, I didn't do it perfect, but I finished strong. And I'm putting it in the hands of a very capable couple who are going to, like David, I had this dream to build a house, but he couldn't finish it because he was a man of war. And I have fought many a war in the trenches to get it to here, because I believe Vince and Letitia are going to build this house the way God always intended it to be. And it will be a house built on honesty. It'll be built on openness. It'll be built on transparency. It'll be built on good relationships, not people hiding in the shadows, not people hiding and doing their Sunday thing and then come out and put on their best and then go home and keep their secrets. It won't be built around platforms and performances. It'll be built on presence and power, because that's what God wants to do. I appreciate you for being and giving me your ear tonight. Father, I just pray tonight. I pray that you'll give us an ear to hear. God, help me, oh God. Help me, God. Help me to say what I need to say. Nothing more, nothing less. Help me to be honest and open and transparent. God, as I try to put this together for people, so it'll be like a nail in a sure place that they can tie their hope, their faith to, and know this nail is the nails of the cross and the finished work of Calvary. And God, I just thank you for each one who's come along. I thank you for City Point. for every person that you've given me. The honor and the privilege to share my heart. I only want your best for each one of them. I'm not here to build my kingdom or to lift up my name. I'm not here for me, Lord. I'm here for you. And I pray you'll bless them and keep them and make your face to shine on them. In Jesus' name.